it further, if you're not a CPA and if you're in an accounting firm, you're called principal and not a partner. And that's the reason why it's my designation is principal. No, so again, I'm part of tax and corporate services group within the Deloitte, and tax and corporate is part of Landicho Abella and Company. For audit services, it's part of Navarro Ampere. So we have two different entities. Both are part of Deloitte Philippines. So as part of tax and legal, we provide end-to-end tax services from tax compliance to tax advisory, which includes tax return preparation, tax ruling assistance, tax audit investigation, tax training, and tax consultancy. In 2024, I was asked to take the role as a business tax leader. At the same time, I'm also the Japanese Services Group Leader and Chinese Services Group Leader here at Deloitte Philippines. So what does this mean is that if ever that there are, for example, Japanese investors which are interested to invest in the Philippines, we assist them in, for example, establishing business in the Philippines, availing of tax incentives. So I deal a lot uh, of my time with the various investment promotion agencies. I usually frequent the BAR offices whenever I assist my clients in terms of tax audit and investigation. And other government agencies, for example, local government, various local governments, SEC, in terms of, for example, whenever we assist our clients in incorporating their business in the Philippines. As mentioned, no, I'm a proud graduate of the PUP. I took up the bachelor's degree in applied economics. I was able to finish it in 1988. And after that, I took my MBA at Colegio de San Juan de Letran. And just recently, as part of our continuing education in Deloitte, we were required to attend leadership training, which are being handled by the West Point faculty as in Taylor leadership, Taylor group, no, which was held in Bali, Indonesia. I represent Deloitte at the Employers Confederation of the Philippines. I'm a member of the Tax Management Association of the Philippines. And recently, I was asked also to join the IT and Business Process Association of the Philippines, which probably you know better as IBPAP. I just want to highlight this. It's the first time for us to be recognized as Tax Firm of the Year. This is for 2025. And for straight 6 years, we are recognized as the Transfer Pricing Firm of the Year by the International Tax Review. You can see it in the ITR Asia Pacific Tax Awards for 2025. Okay, so for those who do not know Deloitte, Deloitte is a global professional services firm. It's part of what probably you have read or heard, which is they call it the Big Four. So among the Big Four, it's the biggest in terms of revenue. As you can see here, no, for 2024 alone, Deloitte earned a revenue of 67.2 billion, which is ahead of its competitor. Second, no, which earned about 55.4. In the news reports in 2025, Deloitte earned about 70.5 billion. Again, no, for this reason, it continues to lead the other big four firms in 2025. So in the Philippines, relatively we're young because Deloitte Philippines was only founded in 1997. So, but we have rapidly grown over the years. Right now, we have about 1,000 professionals and we have 29 partners in two cities. We have our main office here in BGC and we have another office in Cebu. So in the Philippines, we provide audit services. which is being provided by Navarro Ampere, while the assurance, strategy, risk, and transaction tax services are provided by Landicho, Abela and Company. So as I mentioned earlier, we have two entities here in the Philippines, Landicho, Abela, and Navarro Ampere, and both are part of the Deloitte network. And just to mention, no, in 2024, Deloitte Global retains its title as the world's most valuable and strongest commercial services brand. Um, and in 2025, we were honored as the Google 2025 Partner of the Year in terms of artificial intelligence. Later on, we'll have a discussion further on the AI. And I think since we have an audience, a student audience, I think it's an area that we need to focus on. It's an area that if we think that there's a need for us to upskill, so that we'll be able to again continue our preference by the employers. It's an area that I think we should look into. Okay, so that's about Deloitte. So again, no, to summarize my career
Sir
journey.
Senen,
Yes,
Sir Senen, yes,
yes,
before
Amy.
we continue po, let me introduce our VP SAS po, Sir Tom Testor. He would like to greet you daw po, Sir Tom, VP Tom, our
Yes,
VP.
yes. Hi, Tom.
Sorry, Senen. Sabi ko
Yes.
kay Ma'am Emmy, papasok ako dito sa Zoom kasi I want to greet you. Si Senen ay kaibigan ko yan. In fact, si Art ay also in this room.
Oh,
Artemus Cruz, nandyan siya. Sige,
yes.
pasensya
Sir
na. I just want to greet you, Senen.
Yes, sure. Oh,
Have a good day.
thank you,
Thank you
Tom.
very much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much
Nice
for
hearing from you
accepting.
again.
Maraming salamat for accepting our invitation as our
Sure.
resource speaker for today.
Basta
Thank you.
PUP lang,
Thank you
sure.
so much po.
All right, go ahead.
Sir
Thank you.
Tom.
Okay.
Sir
Oo.
Artemus Cruz po, would you like to greet Sir Senen, Sir Artemus Cruz?
Hello, sir. Good morning, pare. Hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Yes. Oo.
Well,
Thank you very much no for attending this
of
session.
course.
Oo. Yun, ayun niya. Oo. Okay. So again, to continue, earlier, Emmy was saying about my career journey, and probably just to again, reiterate, and probably later on we'll discuss, how this actually impacted my, my success in my career, So, well, I was a student from 1984 to 1988, and I started my career in government um, and stayed there for 16 years before moving to the private sector in 2005. And until now, no, I'm still part of the firm in the private sector. So still counting, no, it's already 20 years now since I joined, the private sector in 2005. So initially, I worked as a tax researcher at the National Tax Research Center, which is an attached agency of the Department of Finance. Later on, I'll have discussion on what actually we're doing as a tax researcher at the National Tax Research Center and how it shaped my career later on, when I joined the private sector. And probably just an information, uh, during that time, I don't know exactly the policy right now. You can already take the civil service exam, even if you're not a graduate. So I took the civil service exam in 1988. I think it's first semester. And during that time, the results are not released immediately. So you have to wait for 1 year, or after 1 year that you get the results of your exam. So after graduating in October 1988, in 1989, when I received the results of my exam, I also received an invitation from the Civil Service Commission to join the National Tax Research Center. And it so happened that since I'm a graduate of economics, so, well, it's aligned with what I took, no, in college. So I applied at the National Tax Research Center. So I was hired as a tax researcher. And I remember during that time, it was the first year that the standard standardization law was being implemented. So the positions are divided into different SG. No, I think it was SG 11 as a tax researcher one. So 2 years after, I was promoted as tax assessor two, and I was lucky, I was uh, allowed to attend a course in Japan. No, that's my first tax course. That's for 3.5 months, and later on, I was promoted as a senior tax specialist. Uh, and later on again, I was appointed as OIC, and I think up to now, the requirement is before you get appointed, you have to take a master's degree. So I took my master's degree and was able to finish it in 2000. So permanently, I was appointed as chief tax specialist up to 2005. And during the course of my, career, in government, I was able to meet a lot of people, particularly in Congress and BIR, for example, because whenever we attend public hearings, they were there. And I was invited to join the private sector because it so happened that that person also joined the private sector. No? So in 2005, I joined a local firm. Emmy already mentioned it, as tax manager. One thing that is interesting at that time is when I joined the private sector, I did not handle any clients, no, because I came from government. The stakeholders are also government, no. So it's a most challenging, no, career shift, no. Later on, I'll discuss it further, no. So initially, I did not handle any clients, but later on, when I gained a lot of knowledge about the practice, no, I was able to assist clients when I became a senior tax manager. And later on, in 2014, 2015, I was invited to join Deloitte. And in less than a year, I became a tax director and promoted as a tax and legal partner in 2018. So up to now, I'm part of Deloitte. I'm more than already 10 years in Deloitte. And this actually, if you look at our career journey, it spanned 36 years, since I graduated from PUP. So this is my journey as a student, and later on probably tell you, how it influenced, my career, journey, And what you can see in the left side portion of my slides are the things that I know you can no longer see now in PUP, So I was a student from 1984 to 1988, and this is a very significant period in Philippine history. I think it is a period characterized by both economic and political turmoil. It's a period that there's an upheaval. It's a period where the dictatorship ended and our democracy was restored. It was also the time when President Prudente was reinstalled as president of PUP. I just want to highlight, first, during that time also, if you would notice, there's still a typing course. Right now, we don't have that anymore, no. During that time, we still have to take Spanish lessons. Uh, at that time, ROTC is still mandatory. I know it's no longer mandatory. And of course, since we're taking a typing course, there was no computer yet at the time. So you could just imagine, even at the time that I was employed in 1989, we have to do everything using the typewriter. So if you committed a mistake, it's either you use the snow flick or you have to retype everything again, So we don't have that convenience at that time, which is I think is very important and it's part of our learning lessons as a student also, which again, shape our uh, values and later on help us, in our career. So just a story, it was in 1984 when I joined PUP, but there's a story also in this, unlike probably now that you have to take exam a year before that you join the university, uh, during that time, there's no requirement for you, I think, unless I'm mistaken, for you to take an entrance exam a year before that you will join PUP. I do remember when I graduated in high school from Mapua, that is already made that I haven't chosen the university that I would enter into. So when I decided to enroll in PUP, there's no longer any examination, entrance examination that was available. So you have to go to PUP Bataan. And it's a, I think, 2 hour drive from our place in Pampanga at the time, no? So you could just imagine, no, driving, going to PUP at the time. So when the results came in later on, it's the default for me, no, because I came from a pre-engineering school, so I took industrial communication engineering, and later on just to realize that, well, I don't like engineering, no, and that's the reason why I shifted my course to applied economics in 1985. As I mentioned, it's a significant period in Philippine history. In 1986, uh, there was a snap election. It was the time that there was a change in government. We were part, Tom, and all other, no, Art was part of this group. We barricaded PUP asking for Prudente to be reinstalled. So in 1986, Prudente was reinstalled as PUP president. And it was also during that time that we uh, formed a constituent assembly which drafted the constitution of the PUP Student Council. In 1987, and together with some of our audience right now, we ran uh, as in the PUP Student Council election, and I was elected as Secretary General. It was also during that time that there was a lot of uncertainties, no, in PUP. There was this ambush, first ambush in 1987 against Prudente. PUP was raided. And in 1988, that's the time that I joined the labor force. So it's my journey is from 1984 to 1988. So what did I learn, no, in PUP that shaped my career later on? In PUP, when you attend your classes, one thing that you would notice is that your classmates belong to diverse socioeconomic background. Some of them are actually really belong to the low income uh, family. Some of them are middle class. Well, very few probably would belong to the upper middle, I don't know, income class. So you're exposed to different socioeconomic backgrounds, and I think one lesson that probably that we would I've learned, no, and some of you probably have also learned is that you understand better uh, what motivates people. You gain new perspective and appreciation on what you have. You gain empathy because you learn about the situation of your classmates and other people in the university, and that gives you an open mind. So I think that's very important. One thing that we learn. I know for a fact, for example, that if you enter your exclusive schools, they even actually provide a course that you can do immersion program. In PUP, you don't need it because the moment you attend class, you already learn the things that these people would learn in enrolling, for example, in immersion programs. It's challenging compared to affluent universities. For example, I do remember entering classrooms where all the jealousies are not there. So you're lucky if you have a classroom at the time that you have an electric fan. So majority of us would actually go to the classroom early so that the moment that the electric fan will be turned on in the middle, you'll be placed in a seat where you will be benefiting, no, when in the electric fan is, no, is turned on, no. So this challenging environment builds resilience. Now you learn about more about resilience and makes you resourceful. I do remember, no, I was watching the video earlier, no, and they also made mention about this, no, the resilience of the PUP graduates and their resourcefulness, no. So during that time, you learn to appreciate what you have and what is available, and even there's a limitation, you were able to, well, we're able to maximize learning and develop gratitude and contentment on what you have. As a student leader, probably I just have to mention this now. I learned this later in life, no, not during that time I was a student leader. You learn more about accountability, and you learn about more about integrity. You learn also about critical thinking because you analyze in social issues. You you learn it also during your interaction with your teachers, with the other students. And what is important also during that time is you learn to network, which I think is very important later on when you want to transition yourself from a uh, entry level employee to later on to be part of the management team. I just want to highlight this because I was mentioning about the PUP Constituent Assembly and highlight that most of the members of the PUP Constituent Assembly are in PUP right now. Uh, Dr. Manuel Muhi, who is the current, well, our president, university president, is part of that Constituent Assembly. And again, we're talking of limitation. I live in Manila, and just to go to the PUP, I have to take this Marikina bus, flying from Divisoria to San Mateo, etc., etc. I have classmates, who are traveling from Manila to Bulacan, and you could just imagine they have to take the train from Bulacan and stop depart from Bulacan and leave at the PUP Altura just to be able to go to school. And every day they have to leave early because they have to catch the last train going to Bulacan, and 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 that's part of the experience, in PUP, And if you look at the learnings and the values that we learn, it form part of the core values that which define our work attitude and ethics, And these are the common traits and values that usually employers would look when they hire employees. And I was looking at the various articles in the website, and since the early 2000, when they conducted the survey, PUP has been consistent, uh, in the choice of employers in terms of hiring. And probably the reason why is if you look at the reasons for their preference, it's very clear. It's the same that I experience, it's the same that you experience, and it's the same that where employers are actually talking, whenever they talk about PUP graduates. We're talking here of PUP students as effective team players. We're talking here of PUP as having a positive work ethic. We're talking here of PUP graduates who are willing to learn, and PUP graduates which has the initiative and honesty and integrity. I do a lot of interviews. I've interviewed a lot of people, graduates from affluent university, exclusive schools, at the same time PUP. And I have to mention to you, whenever we talk about hiring, and probably you've heard about this also, that whenever we hire for attitude and we actually train for the skill. So whenever we do interview, we look at the attitude of the student or the applicant. And also we look at what's driving them, because if you think that if there's this passion that you see, I think, and we feel that these are the same people that we know that would stay as employee, and at the same time, since they are moved by their passion, they are the same people who would later on progress in their career, to become later on as part of the management of whatever, rather even if Deloitte or other employers. So probably the next question that I would like to ask you is, are we satisfied that PUP will just become entry-level employees? I'd like to see the future later that we will be praised that the majority of us are not only becoming entry-level employees, but also moving towards part of the top tier executives, or move towards the leadership path. So whenever we say about leadership, role, I think it's something that we should focus on, and I think it's I've attended a lot of leadership management and courses, and I think two things that students, not only PUP, should be focused on. One is, I think, communication and presentation skills. So even if there's an AI, no, you need to upskill your, well, talent or skills later on. I think communication and presentation is still important. Second is, which I noticed, no, probably, I heard, well, I usually hear it also, no, from my fellow partners, no, that some of the PUP graduates are mahiyain, no, which I would understand, no, because I don't think, well, some of them, I sense, no, there's this thinking that they are inferior. For example, especially when they are in a group together with the graduates from the exclusive schools. I think we have to learn the fact that probably they speak actually, well, the term that they use usually is they are konyo, no? But again, no, I have to mention to you that usually when we hire, we look at the attitude and we understand that if it is an issue of skill, it's something that a person can easily be trained, no? But I think we should develop more confidence whenever we actually get interviewed, especially among well for PUP graduates. No? This is what I like to see. No, and second, probably we just need to address this issue. No, for example, executive presence, strategic thinking, so that later on we see a lot of PUP moving towards the leadership role. And the moment that we see it, no, and there are a lot of people there, they can provide more opportunities for PUP graduates, so that later on, given the economic opportunities being given to employees, we can later uplift the conditions of many people here in the Philippines, knowing fully well that the majority of the students are coming from low-income families. Okay. So what are the things that my first job taught me? I did mention earlier that I started my career in government at the National Tax Research Center, which is an agency attached to the Department of Finance. So basically, at that time, NTRC conducts basic studies in the area of taxation. I was assigned at the direct taxes branch, so the focus of our studies would usually involving income tax and all other direct taxes. We are also asked to provide comments, inputs on legislative proposals. So, for example, if there's a bill that is filed in Congress, whether it's in the House of Representatives or in the Senate, they send it to us for our comments. And the moment that we provide our comments, we are invited to attend public hearings, meetings, usually by the Committee on Ways and Means. So we attend that, and they usually hear our comments, and they ask us questions about our position. So when we do evaluate tax proposals, we use certain criteria, which some of this I learned in college, but again, no, we apply it in evaluating proposals. So we evaluate proposals in terms of equity, meaning, for example, usually we use vertical equity, when we evaluate proposal. For example, the more your income, the more taxes you should be paying. So we look at the proposal if they would satisfy this criteria. Fiscal adequacy, meaning would that tax proposal generate sufficient revenues to finance the expenditures of the government? And second, third, administrative feasibility, whether this particular tax proposal is easy to administer and at the same time would impose least burden to taxpayer. So just an example of what we do during that time, no? I do remember there was an House bill at the time that which proposes to exempt from income tax the uniformed military personnel due to their contribution to the society and in maintaining peace and order. So, for example, if they send this proposal to us, we would evaluate it. And using the criteria that I mentioned, if we see this kind of proposal, this is usually our position. No? We will usually say that while we recognize the contribution of the military personnel in the society and in maintaining peace and order, we respectfully not support the proposal on equity grounds, aside from the possible revenue loss, no, when the proposal is implemented. In terms of equity, we usually say that this would be unfair to the other sectors of society. For example, teachers, which also significantly contribute to society. So this proposal might be considered tantamount to class legislation because it violates equity, etc., etc. So that's the way that we usually uh, provide our comments, no, which is part of my job during that time, no, as a tax researcher. So what are the skills that I gain, no? First, communication and networking skills. So you learn a lot because you attend public hearings, you attend meetings, you provide your inputs in written format. So you learn a lot more, and your constant communication, interaction with other policymakers allow you to further your communication and networking skills. You learn also on how to utilize data and identify sources of data. And I think I carry it until now, no? Whenever they ask me, oh, where this particular information, where can we source this or we can be able to get this, no? I'm easily able to identify it because I learned it from my previous experience and work in government. And one of my advantages when I joined the private sector is I know the history of the tax legislation. So I know the intent of the law. A knowledge of it would allow you to better analyze any tax measures or any tax transactions that you'll be required to comment on, no? And I did have a better understanding of the impact of taxation on stakeholders, having worked in government and also having worked in the private sector, which later on probably we'll also further discuss. Okay. So, uh, if you ask me, the most difficult part in my career is when I shift my career from the government and the private sector. The reason is, well, number one, I worked in the government for 16 years. So it's already my comfort zone. And second, when I shifted my career, no, from government to private sector, we're basically talking here of a major shift. It's a steep learning curve for me. Imagine, when I was in government, my stakeholders were also government employees. I deal with Congress, I deal with the BAR, I deal with my colleagues in the Department of Finance. When I was in the private sector, I deal with taxpayers, clients. I deal with other firms. So it's totally different. So my perspective changed from being government centric to taxpayer centric. Second, the perspective is different. As I mentioned earlier, when I was evaluating proposals, I took a public finance, well, as an expert SME in public finance, no? And I implement the public finance goals, meaning equity, revenue, etc. When I shifted my career to the private sector, now I'm looking from the perspective of the taxpayer. And it actually involves implementation of yung real world application of tax laws. I'm talking here of policy, and in private, I'm talking about implementation and compliance of taxpayers. And as I mentioned, we're talking basically of stakeholders, no, policymakers. So this is very important, no. I think one thing that I learned is that sometimes if you need progress, you have to leave your comfort zone. Imagine, no, if I stayed in government, so I will not be given the opportunity. Second, you have to be mindful of yung, in order for you to move career forward your career, you have to stay ahead of the curve. Meaning, you have to learn new knowledge, enhance your skills, and you continue to learn, no? One thing that I learned during the time that I was already in the private sector, which I continue to adapt, is I focus on value. Meaning, I make myself indispensable. If I have a client, Usually, I'm proactive. I usually tell them, oh, there's a new regulation. This is the way that it will impact your business. And they appreciate it. So I add value on the services I provide to client. And that's the reason why, one of the reasons why they stay with me as client is because they appreciate the value, that additional value that I provide to them aside from the services I provide usually as tax consultant of my clients, no? Second, if you anticipate the needs of your client, you learn to take the initiative and become proactive. So I think it's very important, no, if later on you join a company, if you adopt this kind of mindset, it would allow you to later on to graduate, no, and move towards, no, the leadership path. So that is what I learned, no, particularly is very important when I shifted my career from government to the private sector. Okay. So just to give you an idea, no, of the drastic change, no, that took uh, that happened in my career, no. Imagine, no, if I'm still a tax researcher and I'm tax practitioner and I'm an ordinary taxpayer, no. Let's say there's a proposal. I know this is a fake news, no. Secretary Recto did not actually advocated for this, no. But let's discuss assuming, no, that there's a proposal to increase the VAT from 12% to 15%. If I'm still part of the government as a tax researcher, as I mentioned earlier, I would evaluate it in terms of its revenue impact. I would say that, oh, if you increase the 12%, the VAT from 12% to 15%, that would mean additional revenue for the government, which it can use to reduce its budget deficit and finance its growing expenditures. Okay, second, I will tell the government, it's easy to administer and easy to collect because you're just increasing the VAT from 12 to 15%. And in terms of economic perspective, well, the problem probably is could lead to higher prices because that would add to the cost of the commodities and it might reduce the disposable income of lower income family. So if I take that perspective, I'm still government in the government. So this is the way that I'll be thinking. Now, I'm part of the private sector, no? So if in terms of evaluation, this is the way I would see it. Well, if there's a proposal to increase the VAT from 12 to 15%, as a tax practitioner, I'm part of the private sector. I'll be interested more on its impact on my cash flow because I'll be incurring a lot of input taxes. So would I be able to claim that input taxes as part of my output tax? I'll be more interested about my compliance requirements. So how would it be difficult? The moment the shift will be from 12 to 15%, what will be the transition rules? So you can see that difference, no, in the approach, no. And so you could just imagine when I transferred my my career, no, from the government to the private sector. Now, again, if you take a different position, if you're not an ordinary taxpayer, how would you look at the proposal? Sabihin mo lang na, oh, the increase in VAT collection will be lost to corruption, ninanakaw lang yan. So again, no, if you take a different perspective, a different role, you'll have a different perspective. And this is very important, and I think it should always guide us in our thinking whenever we take a different role. And I think this is also important when we move towards, no, move our career towards yung leadership path, or if you become later on top tier, no, executives. Okay, so what is my work currently, no? And just to give you an idea on what I do as a tax practitioner, as I mentioned earlier, I lead the business tax. And just to give you an idea of what I do in terms of compliance and advisory work, I'll discuss some of it, no? I do assist clients in return preparation and review of their tax return. And just to mention to you, last year, no, there was this particular law which imposes VAT on digital services. You might heard about it. It impacted to you if you like watching Netflix, so you're now paying additional 12% VAT. And just to inform you, as part of my work, my team assisted in the registration of non-resident digital services providers. We assisted so far, as of today, 61 non-resident digital service provider, and we do the tax return VAT return preparation of about 36 of that 61. We're basically talking here of non-resident digital service providers, which are involved in, well, they are online platform, marketplace. Some of my clients are involved in online games, software solution, online media advertisement, news channel. One is involved in streaming music and video. One is engaged in cloud services, and the others are engaged in online booking services. So this is part of my role, uh, responsibility as a tax partner in tax involved in tax compliance. How about tax advisory? So this is where the bulk of my, I don't know, activities of my work would usually come in. No, my revenues would come in. So I remember mentioning to you that I also lead the Japanese services group. So if there are investors, for example, are planning to invest in the Philippines, we usually advise our clients on the appropriate business structure, whether it's a branch or subsidiary. We also advise them if, for example, there's equity restrictions. For example, if there are businesses that they cannot own 100%, we advise them as to the period uh, needed to establish, which is, I have to tell you, this is usually the issue that we encounter with foreign investors here in the Philippines. They get frustrated the moment that they hear that it takes us at least 6 months to 8 months for a company to be up and running in the Philippines. This includes the process of incorporating business in the Philippines, registering with the various government agencies. We also advise our clients as to the requirement for submission of financial statements and other reportable requirements, including labor laws. By the way, we also have a legal team which also handles this kind of engagement with our clients. We usually also advise our clients in terms of the tax environment. So, for example, if they want to invest here, they're asking if their particular activity will be entitled to tax incentives. We advise them on that. We also assist them in registering with the various investment promotion agencies, for example, PESA, BOI, etc. We provide advice on the taxation of income repatriation. For example, they want to repatriate dividends, interest, royalties. Later on, I'll give you an example on the things that we do as an advisor to potential investors here in the Philippines, exit considerations, and compliance requirements. So if you look at all of this advisory work that we provide to our clients, non-resident clients, these are all directly related to the issues that foreign investors usually ask us. For example, whenever we talk about the period to establish a business, we're talking of ease of doing business. For example, if you go to Singapore, you can easily register a company in 1 day or 2 days. As I mentioned, here in the Philippines, you need at least 6 months to 8 months. And the moment investors would hear about it is, oh, why is it that it's taking too long? And that would have an impact on their decision whether to go to Indonesia, Malaysia, or Vietnam. Second, that issues that they usually raise is about policy consistency. I'll give you an example. Recently, we just changed our tax incentives. And that does not augur well to our foreign investors. Because usually our foreign investors, when the moment that they come here in, they already compute the expenses that they incur, for example, for a period of 5 years or 10 years. Because that's part of the evaluation that they do before entering any market, whether it's in the Philippines, whether it's in Indonesia, or whether it's in Malaysia. So if suddenly you change your policy, that would have an impact on their perception about the Philippines, that would have an impact on their decision whether to invest in the Philippines. Third, which is I think is very common, is the gap between the intent of the law and its implementation. And we usually experience this. There's a provision in the law, it's very clear, but later on, the moment that the BR implements, it's totally different. And that frustrates foreign investors. So again, I'm now talking about my experience in attracting, in assisting foreign investors to invest in the Philippines. And later on, probably we'll have further discussions about this. Just to give you an idea of what are the things that we do. I'll be focusing on three areas. No? First, market entry modes. No, uh, if you have a foreign investors, usually they would ask us, uh, okay, can we establish a business in the Philippines, or either we establish a branch or subsidiary. But what if we don't want to establish a branch or subsidiary in the Philippines? What if we just acquire an existing company who has already an existing client? So if that is the case, the foreign investors would have two choices. First, they either buy the shares of stocks of the Philippine entity, or they don't buy the shares of stocks of the Philippine entity, they buy the business of the Philippine entity, which would require them to establish a new company and buy the assets of that new company. So these are the decisions that have to be made by a foreign investor, and we assist them in analyzing the transactions. So for example, we'll give you an example. ABC company, a resident in Singapore, plans to buy an existing company in the Philippines. As I mentioned, sometimes a foreign investor would just don't want to establish an entity, we just want to buy a new company because it has already a market in the Philippines. No, in order to decide whether to purchase shares of stocks of the company or just buy the target's business, it asks us, Deloitte, to conduct a tax due diligence. So what we'll do is look at the tax compliance of PH OPCO in this particular instance. No, so we'll check all the tax compliance if there's a tax exposure on the Philippine OPCO company. So, for example, after conducting TDD, we discovered that there's a substantial legacy tax issue involving the PHO company. If that is the case, if I'm the SG Holdco company buying into the shares of stocks of PHO company, I won't buy that company because the moment I acquire the ownership of that company and later on the BIR will go after the PHO OPCO, I'll be the one who have to pay for all of this legacy issue or historical tax liabilities of the company. And in order to avoid that particular issue, one option that I might want to consider is instead of buying the shares of stocks of the Philippine OPCO, I'll just buy the assets of the OPCO, which would necessitate for me to establish a OPCO and just buy the business of the OPCO. So this is one of the things that we usually assist our clients in making decision whether option one, buy sale of shares of stocks, or option two, not buy the sale of shares of stock, but buy the business of the Philippine company. That's an issue on the market entry modes. No? Another issue is availment of treaty benefits. So I'll give you an example, no? Again, no, ABC investor is a resident in Cayman. So we have an investor which is a resident of Cayman, and that particular company in Cayman intends to establish a corporation in the Philippines. However, one thing that they need to consider is that we don't have any tax treaty between Cayman Island and the Philippines. So it cannot avail of any relief from tax treaty. But according to the, for example, to Cayman, it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to have a Cayman Island. We can have another entity, for example, in Netherlands or in Singapore. Please change the Netherlands here in Singapore, no? So we can have another company, ABC company in Singapore, which would own the Philippine company, not necessarily the Cayman. So again, the client will be asking us, so if that is the particular case, no, would I be able to benefit from the tax treaty? So let's start with the first example, no. If the Cayman Island would own the ABC company in the Philippines, and for example, it declares dividends, the dividends declared by the Philippine company to the Cayman, because there's no tax treaty, will be subject to the 25% final withholding tax. So what can be done here is that instead of the Cayman Island owning the ABC company, we can establish another entity below the Cayman Island, for example, Singapore, which would own the Philippine company. And under the Philippine-Singapore tax treaty, if there's a dividend that is declared to the ABC company in Singapore, it will only be subject to 15% final withholding tax. So instead of being subjected to 25% final withholding tax, if the Philippine entity is instead owned by a Singapore entity, you can avail of the lower rate, which is 15%. And if it is so happen that under the Cayman and Singapore tax treaty that there's no tax, when the Singapore entity declares dividends to the Cayman Island, you can see now the difference. Before, the dividends will be subject to 25% tax. But if you restructure the entity, wherein the Singapore entity would instead first own the Philippine entity, you'll benefit and reduce the tax from 25% to 15% by establishing an entity, intermediate entity that would own the Philippine entity. Remember, in Singapore, for example, in other countries, it's very easy for you to establish an entity. And second, the compliance cost, if you maintain the entity, is very small. So it makes sense for you to establish an intermediary company so that you'll benefit under the tax treaty and reduce the tax from 25% to only 15%. So this is just the way that we usually look at the transactions. So this requires a lot of knowledge of existing rules, local, domestic rules, and tax treaty rules. Another example is this, no? Okay, so this involves, again, no, exit strategy. So we usually advise our clients not only on the entry, on the tax implication the moment that they put their investment in the Philippines, we also advise them on ways to how to repatriate their profits, and also advise them on the tax implication the moment that later on they decide to exit their investment from the Philippines. So in this particular case, we have two options. Option one is, what if I sell later on the shares that I own in the Philippine company? And of course, we all know, under the Philippine tax code, the moment that you sell the shares of the Philippine entity, it will be subject to 15% capital gains tax. However, under the tax treaty between Philippines and Singapore, it can be exempt provided that the Philippine entity, its real property interest is not more than 50%. The problem with this is, although there's an exemption available, it takes time for you to secure a ruling from the BAR. So if the buyer is already, would like to already own the shares, so you might want to think of other option in disposing the ownership of the Philippine company, which is the Philippine OpCo. So what are the options available? So if you have an ABC investor, resident of Singapore, what you can do is, instead of selling the Philippine shares, which is OpCo, which is option one, you just sell the HoldCo shares, which owns 100% of the OpCo shares. When you sell the HoldCo shares, which is the Singapore entity shares, it's not subject to tax here in the Philippines because we don't tax indirect transfer of shares. And there's no requirement for you to secure a e-car because your selling is not the Philippine shares, but the Singapore shares. So this is the way that usually we look at the transactions, we look at the other options available for foreign investors where they can maximize the opportunity to lower the taxes applicable on their transactions. So in this particular case, we're talking of exit strategy on investments. Okay, so let's discuss, no? There's another example that I wasn't able, no, to show, no? Okay. Okay, so let's discuss another areas that we usually our clients would seek advice on. I know that there's a proposal from the Department of Finance to increase the tax-exempt de minimis benefits. This does not require legislation, and I think we expect that the revenue regulations might be issued anytime, probably end of this year or next year. So whenever we talk about de minimis benefits, these are benefits that are given at a relatively small value to the employees. And under the existing provisions of the tax code, if you receive de minimis benefits, these are exempt from tax. So for example, the proposal is for laundry allowance, currently is being given 300, it will be increased to 400. Employee achievement awards from 10,000 to 12,000. Christmas or anniversary gifts from 5,000 to 6,000. So there's just this summary of the increase that we expect from the proposal of the Department of Finance. So overall, in total, we're talking here of additional 16,000 de minimis benefits. So what does it mean? So if currently your employer provides this de minimis benefits, so because of the increase, you'll enjoy an additional 16,200 exempt, meaning that's an additional take-home pay for you, no? Provided, of course, that your employer will be providing all these benefits and they'll be increasing it, no? And the impact of this would, of course, depend on which bracket that you currently fall. So if you fall under 5%, it's equivalent of tax-free benefit of 810 up to 5,670 if you belong to the 35% tax bracket. Okay. Since we're talking about de minimis benefits, let's have a review of the tax treatment of de minimis benefits. Okay. So rule number 1. So if you're given de minimis benefits and the benefit or the amount conforms to the prescribed ceiling, the benefit that you receive as de minimis is exempt, meaning no withholding tax on compensation or FBT shall be applied on your benefit. Second, you don't include that benefit to the 90,000 tax exempt threshold. So example, if your employer grants you 7,000 uniform allowance, which is now the current threshold, no, to be considered de minimis, since the uniform allowance does not exceed 7,000, it means that the 7,000 is exempt from withholding tax on compensation. If you're a manager or supervisor employee, it's not subject to FBT, and that 7,000 should not be included on your 13th month pay and other benefits, which is also exempt from tax. Okay. What if your employer grants you more than 7,000? Meaning, for example, the uniform allowance that you receive is 9,000. So it's beyond the prescribed ceiling and it's more than 2,000, right? So the second rule is if the amount exceeds the ceiling, which is in our example exceeds 7,000, the excess, which is 2,000, because 7,000 less 9,000 is 2,000, the excess shall be considered as part of the other benefits. Meaning, it may still be exempt, provided that when you combine it with your 13th month pay and other benefits, is that not exceed 90,000. So, for example, your employer grants you 9,000 uniform allowance, and you currently receive 80,000 13th month pay and other benefits. So, the excess, which is 2,000, would have to be added to the 80,000 that you receive. So 2,000 plus 80,000 is 82,000. Does the 82,000 exceed 90,000? The answer is no. So therefore, the 9,000, including the 2,000 excess of 7,000, would continue to be considered exempt because when combined to the 80,000, it does not exceed 90,000. So in other words, even if you receive de minimis benefit in excess of the threshold, it may still be exempt from tax provided that when you combine it with your 13th month pay, it does not exceed the 90,000 limit. So rule number 3, what if you receive excess de minimis benefits and the moment that you put it together with your 13th month pay, it already exceeds 90,000. So again, let's go back to our example. Employee received 9,000 uniform allowance, so there's an excess of 2,000. And they already received 90,000 13th month pay. So the moment that you add the 2,000 to the 90,000, it's already 92,000. So what would happen to that excess of 2,000? Meaning 90,000 plus 2,000, 92,000. So there's an excess of 2,000. The 2,000 excess over the 90,000 shall be subject to withholding tax on compensation, regardless whether the recipient is an rank and file employee or managerial or supervisory employees. Meaning, regardless who is the recipient, it will be subject to withholding tax on compensation. It will not be subject to FBT if the recipient is a supervisory or managerial, occupying managerial position. Okay. So that's the rule on de minimis benefits and 13th month pay. We usually also receive inquiry regarding allowances. And the usual feedback or comment that we receive is, why is it that this particular company exempt our income and that company requires us to produce receipts or invoices, no? We call now invoices because we don't have any receipts anymore, no? Invoices, and the only requirement is it should be put under the name of meaning the invoices should be put under the name of the company. So whenever you hear that, actually, the question is there a legal basis for this? The answer is yes. And if you look at the RR or Revenue Regulations 2-98, which is the Consolidated Withholding Tax Regulations, we're basically talking here of the fixed or variable allowances. So the general rule is this: fixed or variable transportation, representation, and other allowances received by employees are considered compensation subject to withholding tax, except when this is the time that it's considered exempt. Number one, it is ordinary and necessary expense paid or incurred by the employee in the pursuit of trade or business or profession. Second, the employee is required to liquidate the expenses, and any unliquidated amount shall constitute taxable income if it is not returned by the employee. Okay, so example, I gave you 10,000. And the 10,000 I gave to the employee. Oh, employee, we have a particular client. You can treat that person to a restaurant, and you get receipts under the name of the company. Okay. So the employee spent that amount and he was able to spend 9,000. And he was able to give a receipt, OR or invoice to the company. So the 9,000 is considered a business expense, and the 1,000 which the employee was not able to provide substantiation will be considered compensation if not liquidated, meaning it's not covered by receipt. Usually, the term that is being used here is the tax shield, but usually we don't advise it. No, we're just telling you this because this is the legal basis for this. And second, remember that the moment that you allow your employees to provide you receipts, there's another condition that you need to satisfy. That this particular expense, whether it's for gasoline, whether it's for restaurant or entertainment, etc., etc., you have to prove that you have incurred it in the pursuit of your trade or business. So it's not enough that you provide receipts or invoices to your company and say that it is exempt. You have to prove that it's necessary in the pursuit of trade or business. The reason why I'm telling you this is a lot of people were asking if the moment that you provide invoices, it will be considered a valid expense on the part of the company. It may not be true. For example, if you allow your secretary to reimburse expenses, later on the BR might question you that, how is it related to the business? Well, in fact, your secretary does not actually meet clients. So the moment that you're asked that particular question and you'll not be able to prove that is actually used for business, that will be an issue with the BAR. So basically, just a reminder, no, the moment, or in case that you're doing this, no, number one, you just only accept valid invoices, and there's a requirement for you that the moment you substantiate it, the invoice should contain all the required information. For example, the tax identification number of the company, the name of the company, the address of the company, etc., for it to be considered a valid supporting document the moment that you claim an expense for that deduction. Second, invoices for personal expenses should not be covered. Imagine, no, you're claiming it as a business expense, tapos the moment you see it, you see diaper, etc., etc. Of course, obviously, that particular expense cannot be considered a business expense because diapers are personal expenses. Third, the moment, for example, you're an employer, you allow it to be claimed as an expense, you should be aware that there's a limitation as to the amount that you are able to claim as an expense. It's 0.5% of your net sales if you're engaged in sale of goods and services, or goods or properties, and 1% if you're engaged in the sale of services. And fourth, if you belong to the top withholding agent, you have to make sure that the moment you claim it as an expense, you have to be able to withhold. And usually, this is where the problem would come in. So, for example, you allow your employees, you're based in Manila, you allow your employees to treat a customer in Cebu. And since you belong to a top withholding agent, you're required to withhold 2% or 1% if it is good or services respectively. So the moment that you treat your employee and you get the receipt or invoices, how would you actually apply the withholding? Can you tell your employee that the moment that you pay the restaurant, can you withhold 2% and issue 2307 to the restaurant? So that would usually is a problem that we encounter. Although the remedy here is usually you allow your employees to use your company credit card so you avoid the obligation to withhold 1 or 2% as a top withholding agent. Okay. And another no issue that usually that right now our clients would ask us is this. Under the train law, the FBT rate was increased to 35%. So if you provide fringe benefits to your managerial and supervisory employee, it is subject to the higher rate of 35%. And under the FBT law, the FBT is shouldered by the employer. So I'll give you an example. If you provide car subsidy to your managerial and supervisory employee, is subject to the 35% tax FBT, and the requirement is for you to gross it up. The reason for grossing it up is that to make sure that the amount that the employee would receive will not be diminished by tax. So for example, if you want to give them 100,000, for them to continue receiving 100,000 without the tax, you have to gross it up. In our example, 100,000, if you gross it up at the rate of 35%, you divide it by 65%. So the total cost insofar as the employer is concerned is 153,000. And since the tax will be shouldered by the employee would continue to receive 100,000. Hindi siya mapabawasan ng tax, kaya lang ang cost is higher for the employer. Okay. So, since the FBT rate is higher, so there's always this question. Is it better for me to give managerial employees allowance na lang which is subject to withholding tax on compensation instead of FBT? For example, what I know is if you're a managerial or occupying managerial supervisory position, usually your tax bracket would fall under the rate of 25%. Meaning your income would range from 800,000 to 2 million. And that is subject to 25% tax. So if I give you an allowance, for example, transportation allowance, and you're not required to substantiate it, meaning the company would not claim it as a business expense. And since you're willing to give it undiminished by tax, meaning 100,000, o sige, gross up na rin natin yan para matanggap mo 100,000, walang kabawasan ng buwis. So, 100,000 divided by 70%, 75% pala, no? Forget about the computation, no? So 133,000, 333,000 will be the cost. The income tax rate will just be 33,000. Compare it, if you subject it to tax, it will be subject to 53,846. So right now, it makes sense more to give managerial supervisory employees with benefits which are subject to withholding tax on compensation instead of giving them benefits which are subject to FBT, because in terms of costs, in terms of benefit, it makes sense more to give them allowances that is subject to withholding tax on compensation than give them benefits which are subject to FBT. So these are the types of advisory work that we provide to our clients. that they are seeking, no, because they are seeking guidance on how to properly structure their compensation packages so that they will be able to maximize the benefit in terms of net take home pay on the part of the employees, and at the same time reduce their costs as employer. Earlier, we were discussing about the minimis benefits, and usually we are also asked about this, and we usually advise also our clients on how to properly structure their compensation to be able to maximize yung tax benefits. So these are just example of what we do, no, as part of our advisory work. And usually, as part of our thought leadership, we also get invited to share our views. Sometimes we are approached by newspapers reporters to ask our opinion from the perspective of our clients. For example, I was recently asked about the impact of the digitalization program of the BIR. They asked us about our comments on our experience with respect to the tax filing, electronic filing system, where again, I mentioned that until now, during the heavy season or busy season, we encounter difficulties in filing because of the system downtime, the capability of the BAR, of their system, especially there's a deluge of taxpayers filing their returns. We were also asked about the reduction in the VAT tax rate proposal, now from 12% to 10%. And we also contribute articles in various newspapers, etc. And also, we get invited by the different organizations, for example, PMAP, ECOP, Phoenix, ACPASI, usually PICPA, to share our views, to provide updates on latest developments on tax. And I just want to highlight one thing, no? Every year, almost every year, I also get invited to attend a global tax conference where usually they would group us or cluster us with the other, meaning the Philippines with the other jurisdictions or geographies. And based on my experience, for example, in this particular slide, Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines were grouped. And usually in those forums, potential investors and existing clients would attend. The attendees would usually would involve about 200 to 300. And the venue is usually in either Singapore and Hong Kong. Sometimes it's both because the regional hubs are usually in Singapore and Hong Kong. And this is my experience, no? And when you read the newspapers, you usually read that there are a lot of investments that are coming in. For example, I saw this newspaper article about Samsung investing about 50 billion in the Philippines. PESA was able to secure about 175 billion. And if you look at the amount, you'll get the impression that we're attracting a lot of investments. And I have to tell you, we're not. Sometimes it's very important that we just don't look at the figures that we see in the newspaper. I suppose we need to benchmark ourselves also with others. And I think this is also important in terms of our career, no, progression. Sometimes we think that we're doing good, but if you look at the others, no, you benchmark yourself with others, oh, hindi pala ako ganun kagaling, no? So I have to level up, no? The same with our country, no? Based on my experience, whenever I talk about the Philippines, they usually complain first about the business climate, the days of doing business here in the Philippines. Remember my discussion regarding the difficulty in securing, for example, incorporation here in the Philippines. It takes us 6 months. Well, compared to the other countries, they just able to get it in 1 day, 1 week, or 1 month, etc. So we lag behind in terms of in this area. In terms of tax audit, they also complain, although we're always on top. Next is Indonesia, and if you include India, they include also India. But of course, there's always preference when they do business to do business in Singapore, Vietnam right now. Again, no, if you relate it to the other news item, not only investment, but also in terms of tourism, in terms of education, we also lag behind. And I do remember there was one time that we invited Shelo, Professor Shelo, to discuss about our socio-economic demographics. And it's worrying, because what we're seeing is that a lot of our students right now are not competitive enough. Before, no, if you go to Vietnam, for example, they basically don't speak English. But right now, whenever I do attend conferences, even if they are from Indonesia, they are from Vietnam, they speak very well English. So we don't, uh, we always hear that our competitive advantage is in our language. No, we're not. I think we're really lagging behind, and it's something that our government should really address. Because while we're actually growing, we're not growing as fast as our neighbor, and that's the reason why. Uh, well, if you've been to Vietnam, if you've been to Indonesia, and if you've been to Malaysia, well, exclude Malaysia, no, just compare yourself with Indonesia and, for example, Vietnam. There's been a lot of interest when there was pivot, no, well, to ASEAN countries, now when the investors were moving out of the China, they were all going to Indonesia and Vietnam. Very few are going to the Philippines. And something that probably, in my opinion, is something that we need to address. If you're a student, later on, if you become a professional, if you become part of the government, I think it's something that we should look into uh, later on. No? So another thing that I would like to discuss is uh, in the last conference that I attended, Deloitte conference, we have a lot of discussion about the future of workplace. And we're all unanimous that the organization later on will all be fueled by AI. In fact, you can see it already in your mobile phones, in Google. We're not just talking about ChatGPT, in the private sector, I see a lot of organizations using Copilot, which is Microsoft. And I think we're not just talking of ordinary AI, no? We're talking of generative AI, which is capable of actually uh, mimicking human skills, no. For example, it does not only use database, no. In Deloitte, no, the moment that we enter, they would scan your eyes, yung eyes mo, etc., etc. That's ordinary AI, no, meaning using existing database, no? But it's more than that, no. Generative AI actually can create content for you. Uh, right now, we're already using it, starting to use it, and we're advocating the use of AI. In one of the articles that I've read, it is able to reduce about 75% of the research work that they are doing right now. And that's the direction of the work. We need to upskill our skills, no, integrate it with AI, because I think the future is all of us should be able to use AI in our tasks, in our work. No? So, what are the areas that AI would have an impact on in the near future, no? In the immediate future, I think, no? So these are the areas, no? Non-routine physical jobs such as, routine physical jobs, no? Which include tasks like factory, work delivery, etc., etc., data analysis, creative jobs, no? Social emotional jobs, etc., etc., no? And in one of our industry learnings that I attended, no? The example was about radiological uh, radiological actually diagnostic, no, and in the example, no, the AI was able to accurately make diagnostics of the X-ray, no, uh, uh, and they're just comparing it. Of course, no, according to the industry learning that I attended, first, we have to make sure that the AI that we're using is trustworthy. And of course, in the use of AI, it's basically still a tool that we need to use, and we have to be responsible in using AI. But then again, no, I just want to highlight this also, no. My area of expertise involves usually accounting students, no. So I was able to get one article that was recently published. I think it was published last week, no. This involves a 39-year-old accountant, and according to the accountant, he knew that AI was coming already. So what he started is vibe coding. Uh, I'm not an expert about vibe coding, but vibe coding is something that is now becoming a trend. Later on, I'll show an article, no, and it's not now even included in the dictionary, no, in 2025. No? So what did the accountant do, no? The long-time accountant, there was a mention of his name. So what he did is he learned vibe coding to stay ahead of AI. And because of the pressure right now to use AI, so he learned more about generative AI, particularly about vibe coding. Vibe coding, as I understand, is you use the AI right now to develop a tool or software for you. So even if you're not knowledgeable about coding, about developing software, you can instruct an AI to develop a code for you. For example, if you love music and you want to have a different catalog about your music, for example, jazz or mood, emotions, etc., etc., you can instruct the AI to develop a system for you to be able to categorize all of your music catalog. So that's the power of AI right now, no? In this particular case, Chan, the name is Chan, is he used AI to develop a optimal system of software that will be able to recognize, scan, and process receipts and automatically export them into the files for his company's finance team. He's also using AI to automate his workflow, such as generating invoice. So imagine, no, you can already use AI. This person developed an application that is capable of exporting the files and identify the invoices and record it, automate it in part of his inflows. So can you just imagine the impact of AI in the workplace? And just to mention to you, uh, this is the about vibe coding, no? This is a Deloitte publication about vibe coding, and probably if you have time, you can research on this, no? And yes, just yesterday, no, I look at the various article about vibe coding, and there's a lot of things mentioned about vibe coding. They are telling that it's the future of code. And there's a article whether it's just a hype, uh, and there's a recognition that is a growing trend right now. And it was even included in the Collins Dictionary in 2025 now. And there are a lot of platform, there are a lot of summit discussing about how you can maximize the use of vibe coding and how can you use vibe coding to assist you as part of being enabled employee or personnel in AI. So I think this is what that is what is the focus of my discussion, no. So although we learn from our past, no, I think we should also prepare for the future. And the future, what does the future look is that it will be AI generated. And we can no longer avoid it. I think for the next few years, probably next year, we'll see an extensive use of AI in our workplace. Well, there are barriers, no, to the use of AI. For example, preparedness of the employee, and it takes also time, no, to integrate it in the system. But we're going already towards that direction. And for example, Deloitte, as I mentioned earlier, we're a partner of Google, and we're right now starting to extensively use AI in our tasks, and it's we're seeing the efficiency results, no, in the use of AI. But of course, you have to use a trustworthy AI and should be responsible in using AI, no, in the future. So so again, no, as a reflection, no, on my journey, no, uh, well, today's program is a special opportunity for us to reflect on our paths, no, where I and probably you've come from and where we are now and where we hope to go. And I think each journey is unique, but we are united by a shared commitment to help our community, the PUP community, to achieve, no, its objective. And hopefully, may this session inspire us to take bold steps to keep us learning and use our talents to make a difference, not only in our university, but in our society. So thank you very much for attending this session. Hope that we'll be able to reconnect again, no? And for the students, no, I encourage each of you, when you graduate, to find an opportunity and a way to re-engage and give back to PUP as a community. Thank you very much again, no, for attending this session.
Thank you so much, Sir Senen, for sharing your expertise po about taxation and of course about AI trends and most especially your journey po in PUP. Also, again, we would like to acknowledge the presence of President Manuel Emuhi. Sir Senen, we were not able to acknowledge him a while ago kasi of course we would not want to preempt your discussion. Pero sumili po si President. And of course, again, VP Tom Testor and our AVP, also AVP Flor Oquindo. So na-meet po namin kayo ni Ma'am Flor, right? Sir
Hi,
Yes.
sir. Thank you
Ay, ay.
po. Thank you for your time, sir.
Yes. Thank you for organizing this, no, especially
Yes,
to
sir.
ano, no, Engineer Florindo tsaka Emmy, no.
Yes, sir.
I
Thank you
appreciate it,
po.
no, basta sa PUP, no. We're always available, no. Alam ni
Thank
Tom
you,
yan.
sir. Thank you po.
Opo, lalabas po yung kwento ni Sir Senen sa kwentong Joseph. Kaya
And
namin
I just
pinuntahan.
want to add, no, Emmy, no.
Yes, sir.
My wife is also a graduate of PUP,
Ay,
no.
yes,
And
sir.
Wow.
di ba? And
Yes.
I think I remember na when we were discussing about this, if there's an opportunity also to give back, no, I do remember that she also assisted in the development of the real property evaluation course, no, when she sought funding for that, no. So whenever we had a discussion, no, and there's an opportunity for us, of course, no, we'll always be available and will in any way that we can, no, we can give back, no, to PUP.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much po.
Opo. Invite din po namin si Ma'am Quizon na maging speaker din po, sir. Sige po.
Yes, sir.
Opo.
Thank you.
Opo, to acknowledge Sir Artemus Cruz, Dean Noel Bergonia from the College of Finance. Dean, good morning po. And then Ma'am Ruth Carlos, I think.
Ay, Ruth. Yes.
College of
And
Accountancy and Finance.
yes, si Dean, tsaka si Ruth. Si Ruth, I know her ever
Yeah.
since, no?
Kaibigan natin yan.
Sir, nandito ako sa
College of Business.
faculty.
And
Happy
probably
to
we'll see each
see you.
other, Ruth, sa PICPA convention. No? I'll be attending it also.
Yes, sir. Sir, thank you.
Tama.
Mhm.
Tama.
Ayan, sige po. Meron po ba tayo, thank you po ulit sa ating PUP officials. Meron po ba tayo?
Thank you, Senen. Maraming salamat.
Ay, yes.
I'm leaving, okay?
Okay, yes.
Thank
oo.
you
See you soon, see you
Tom,
soon.
Opo, thank you po.
Alright.
Thank you po. Thank you po, sir.
Congrats, Artdo.
Thank you, Sir Senen.
Thank you.
Thank you po, Sir
Congrats.
Tom.
Thank you,
Thank you
everyone.
po.
Yes.
Meron po ba tayong questions mula sa ating audience, lalo na po sa ating mga estudyante, na somehow perhaps they are not that familiar with taxation? Actually po, ang reason ko din po nung in-invite namin ni Ma'am Flor si Sir Senen, sabi ko nga po sa kanya, kasi as an English major po, hindi po talaga ako, ina-admit ko yon na hindi po ganun kalawak yung kaalaman ko, personally po, no, on taxation. So that's why sabi ko kay Sir Senen before, Sir, parang perfect ka pong speaker kasi kayo po yung magbibigay linaw sa mga idea about taxes na hindi natin masyadong alam. Yan po. Meron po ba question? So siguro ako na lang pong magtatanong kung wala pong question
Yes,
sa chat.
anyhow.
So Sir Opo, do we get what we are supposed to get po from our taxes? And are you in favor po of lowering our taxes in the Philippines? Would it benefit us po?
Okay. Yung lowering of taxes, no? Well, I'll be answering it again, no? As a former, no, supposedly, no, public finance expert and as an ordinary citizen. Of course, no, any reduction in taxes would mean higher net take home for us. And second, especially, right now, no, a lot of people are having economic difficulties, no, so that's relief enough for them, no. But on the other hand, no, the moment that any reduction in the taxes right now would mean a reduction in the amount of money that will be available for government to finance its expenditures. But again, there's another dimension to it, no? Sabihin natin, okay naman eh, kasi ninanakaw naman eh. Kung hindi ninanakaw yan, actually, dapat sufficient yung money. That if it is well spent, no, I don't think that there's a need for us to actually, after reducing it, to increase it again. No? Kasi ang attitude kasi ng public finance expert is, any reduction means we have to find other sources of revenue to compensate for that loss. So parang, pag ni-reduce mo yan, saan natin nahanapin? So in other words, ganun din, no, later on. Second, from the economics point of view also, is, okay, so reduce it, tapos if you look for the other sources, that again, would increase prices, so inflationary rin siya later on. So mag-offset lang din siya, no? So maintaining the balance is difficult, but I do understand the current circumstances of a lot of taxpayers, and any relief would be welcome right now, especially that we're encountering economic difficulties.
Wow, sir. Thank you po for those insights. So hindi pala yun ang solusyon. So dapat po proper management of finances po ano. And siguro po may last na lang po akong question. We noticed po, di ba before, yung online sellers, sabi po wala silang taxes, di ba sir? Pero ngayon po, ang huli kong balita ay meron na po silang taxes. Are you in favor of that, sir? Or yun na nga eh, sabihin natin na doon na nga lang sila kumikita sa online selling, tas itatax pa. Ano pong tingin nyo doon, sir?
Okay. Eto yun, no? Hindi ko bibigay yung personal opinion ko, no? Pero eto yung nadidinig ko, no? And to be fair, no? Yung tatlong online na sinasabi nyo platform, they are all my clients, no? But this is what I'm hearing. I have clients which have brick and mortar. In other words, may physical store sila. And they are subject to income tax. Ang sinasabi nila is, these online sellers are putting us in a disadvantaged position because they're not paying taxes. They can offer the goods much lower price, in much lower price compared to us kasi hindi nga sila nagbabayad ng tax eh. So requiring them to pay would just put them in equal footing with the physical stores. So yun ang isang dimension, no? Which is correct, di ba? Bakit yung mga online hindi nagbabayad, kami nagbabayad, di ba? Ngayon, kung I'm a buyer, right? Of course, I'll be happy na wag silang i-tax kasi they can continue paying us, buying, I can buy them at a lower price compared to a physical store. But of course, you have to look it in terms of in terms of equity, no? Yung sabi ko nga, public finance expert na naman, babaksak tayo, no? Na you have to put them in equal footing. If the other party is paying, the other party should be paying as well. And that's the reason why, insofar as non-resident digital service providers, we are also requiring them to pay. Kasi nga, ibig sabihin, online, hindi ka na magbayad dahil online ka. Di ba?
Opo. So, thank you po for sharing those insights. So, dapat nga siguro lahat, di ba po, magbayad po ng taxes. Opo. Meron po pa po ba tayong questions? Meron lang pong, thank you daw po, sir, for sharing your knowledge and learnings. So, siguro, sir, wala silang masyadong questions sa taxation kasi clear naman po ang inyong discussion. So, with that, sir, we would really like to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for being our speaker for today. Let me go straight din po to the awarding of the certificate. Sir Kenneth. Ayan. So let me read po, Sir Senen and Ma'am Flor Oquindo. Office of the Vice President for Student Affairs and Services, Alumni Relations and Career Development Office. This certificate of recognition is hereby awarded to Mr. Senen Quizon in grateful recognition of his invaluable contribution as a resource speaker for the Balik Sinta webinar series held on November 12 via Zoom and FB Live. His expertise and insights have significantly contributed to the success of this event and have greatly enriched the knowledge of the participants. His dedication in sharing knowledge and contributing to the academic and professional growth of the stakeholders of the Sintang Paaralan is deeply appreciated. Signed by Engineer Flor Oquindo, our director here, and also the AVP SAS, and of course by Sir Tom Testor, our Vice President for Student Affairs and Services. Thank you so much po, sir. May we also have picture taking, sir. And sabi po ni Ma'am Flor, pupuntahan po namin ulit kayo, sir.
Sure. Anytime.
Opo, sir. So please turn on your cam po, yung mga kayang mag-turn on ng cam. Miss Ana, si Miss Ana ba ang magte-take ng pictures from our end? Ito. Smile po. For ano po ata tayo? For panels. First slide daw po. Second slide. Third slide. Fourth slide. Okay, thank you, Miss Ana. So let me go also to, yes po pala, we already have our evaluation link po sa ating Zoom and ganun din po sa Facebook Live. Maraming nanood sa sir sa Facebook Live. And punta po tayo sa Zoom. Almost 90 plus po kanina.
I'm seeing Din, Noel Bergonya.
Yes,
Let's
Dean
see
po.
sa other.
Dean Bergonya, you wanna say something po to sir? Baka nag-hi lang po si sir. Sige po, let me go po to the closing message. On behalf of the Alumni Relations and Career Development Office, we would like to take this opportunity to thank all our students, alumni, faculty members, and staff who joined us for today's webinar. The presentation on taxation is really insightful. We learned many things today, also about AI trends. With that, we would like to thank again our speaker, Mr. Senen Quizon from Deloitte, Philippines, for generously sharing his time, expertise, and experiences. We are proud of your achievements, sir, and I am sure your college, CSSD, is proud of you too. And maraming salamat, Sir Senen, sa pagtanggap sa aming imbitasyon na maging bahagi ka ng buhay ng ating mga scholar ng bayan. You are an inspiration to PUPians. Mula sa amin po sa PUP at sa ARCDO, maraming salamat. Again, we would like to take this opportunity to thank President Manuel Emuhi, VP Tom Testor, our VP SAS, and the whole OVP SAS and ARCDO family, together with Director Flor Oquindo, Chief Jane Pulma, Kenneth, and all our staff for their full support to this endeavor. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat, and we hope to see you po in our next alumni webinar, hopefully on December 11. Please always follow our PUP Alumni FB page and ARCDO YouTube account. Please don't forget also to answer the evaluation form. Muli po, maraming salamat. With
Yes,
that,
thank you.
also, yes, sir. Thank you, sir, and then see you po. And we will send in po the certificate.
Okay, sige. Thank you.
Sir
Bye-bye.
Sinen, pinapasabi po ni President, maraming salamat daw po. Nag-message po siya.
Sige.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
po.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
With that
thanks.
po, with that po, let's have for the PUP hymn. Maraming salamat pong muli. We will be turning off po the Zoom platform and FB Live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much po. See you next month.